Black CEO denied withdrawal at her own bank seconds later. Banking scandal goes viral. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Ma'am, I'm telling you right now we cannot process this transaction. The teller didn't shout this time. He said it loudly enough for half the lobby to hear. 10:17 a.m. First National Bank, Midtown branch. The late morning rush was in full swing. Retirees at the coin counter, a small business owner arguing about merchant fees, two college students opening their first checking account. And at window 3, everything shifted. The teller, a young white man in a navy vest with a gold name tag, kept his voice tight, controlled, but strained. A $500,000 cash withdrawal requires advance notice, he continued. And right now, your account is showing a hold. A hold. That word traveled fast. Across the counter stood Monique Harris. Beige tailored suit. No visible labels. No oversized handbag. Just a structured leather portfolio tucked under her arm. Her posture was effortless. Chin level.
Shoulders relaxed.
What kind of hold? She asked. Her tone was steady. Not defensive. Not raised. The teller clicked his mouse, eyes scanning his screen longer than necessary. It's marked for review. By whom? A pause. Compliance. He didn't look at her when he said it. A man waiting behind her shifted his weight. Someone near the entrance whispered $500,000. Another voice murmured, "That's suspicious." Monique heard the change in air pressure.
She had felt it before.
The branch manager stepped out of his glass office, alerted by the delay. Mid-40s. Crisp gray suit. Expression already set to skepticism. What's going on? The teller turned, slightly grateful for reinforcement. Large cash withdrawal. Account shows a compliance review flag. The manager looked at Monique from head to toe. A quick assessment. Clothes. Hair. Demeanor. We're going to need additional verification, he said, and documentation showing the source of funds. The source, she repeated calmly, is my business account. On file. With this institution. Even so, he replied, voice dipping lower but not softer. When accounts are flagged, we're required to conduct a fraud check before releasing that amount of cash. Fraud. Odd. This time, the word was deliberate. A customer lifted her phone, pretending to text but clearly recording. Monique placed both palms lightly on the counter glass. You're stating my account is under fraud investigation. The manager held her gaze. I'm stating there's a compliance hold. Security had already begun drifting closer. Not aggressive. Just present. A silent signal. Ma'am, the guard said politely, if this is going to take a while, we can step to the side desk. I'm fine right here, Monique replied. The teller exhaled sharply. We can't just hand over $500,000 because someone asks for it.
Someone.
Not a client. Not you. Someone. Monique turned her head slightly toward him. My identification is on the counter, she said. My account history is with your institution. And I called ahead yesterday. The teller hesitated. The manager frowned. There's no note on the account. There should be. He didn't answer that. Instead, he leaned closer. When unusual activity triggers a review, we are obligated to protect the bank. Protect the bank. The phrase settled heavily in the space between them. Monique inhaled once. At 23, she had deposited her first major real estate commission. The teller back then had used the same tone. Routine review. Her funds had been frozen for 10 days. Rent due. No apology. Different branch. Same energy. Back in the present, the manager straightened. Until compliance clears this hold, we will not be releasing funds. The lobby was fully aware now. Eyes up. Phones angled discreetly. Monique slowly lifted her ID from the counter and slid it back into her portfolio. "Are you refusing to honor a withdrawal from my account?" she asked, based solely on this review's. The manager's jaw tightened. "We're following procedure." She studied his face for a long moment. Measured. "Clinical." Then she reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her phone. "Understood," she said quietly. "Let's follow procedure." And that was the moment the room mistook composure for compliance. The manager watched her thumb hover over the screen. He expected hesitation. He expected embarrassment. He did not expect calm. "Is there someone you'd like to call?" he asked, tone tightening. "Because until compliance clears this, the decision stands." Monique didn't look up. "I agree," she said. "Let's involve compliance." She tapped once. Across the lobby, a young associate banker, early 20s name tag reading, Daniel Ruiz, had stopped pretending to reorganize brochures. His eyes flicked between Monique and the manager's office. Something about her composure didn't match the accusation. Most people argued. Most people panicked.
She was cataloging.
The security guard shifted again. "Ma'am, if this escalates, we may have to restrict access to the account temporarily."
Temporarily, she repeated softly.
"That's standard during a review." A woman seated near the investment desk whispered to her husband. She hasn't even raised her voice. Another customer angled his phone more clearly now. The manager crossed his arms. "When accounts are flagged for unusual activity, especially at that amount, we're trained to assume risk." "Risk," Monique echoed. "Yes. To the bank." There it was again. To the bank. Monique finally lifted her eyes fully to his. "And what triggered this unusual activities?" The teller cleared his throat. "The size. And frequency." "I haven't withdrawn cash in over 11 months, she replied evenly. The teller blinked. He glanced back at the screen. That part, at least, was true. The manager stepped in quickly. "Large cash movements are inherently high risk." "For whom?" she asked. "For institutions." Monique tilted her head slightly. "So the institution is uncomfortable." The words were quiet. "Clinical." Daniel behind the counter swallowed. He pulled up the back-end client profile screen, something junior staff weren't technically required to check for routine holds. His brows knit together. There was an internal designation next to her name. Executive tier. He looked at the manager. "Sir," he said carefully, voice low. "There's a Daniel," the manager snapped without turning stick to your station. Silence dropped again. Monique noticed the exchange. Noted it. Stored it. Her phone vibrated once in her hand. A message received. She didn't read it yet. Instead, she slid her portfolio back onto the counter. "I want to be clear," she said loud enough now for the surrounding customers to hear without raising her voice. "You are refusing a lawful withdrawal from a fully funded account without presenting written notice of restriction." The manager's jaw flexed. "We are conducting due diligence." And publicly implying fraud. "I did not say fraud. You said risk. You said unusual. You said review." Each word precise. Measured. In the far corner, someone whispered, "This is about to blow up." Monique finally glanced down at her phone. One new notification. Angela Level 1 initiated. Compliance looped in. She locked the screen again. "Understood," she said. "Then let's document everything." And for the first time, the manager felt something unfamiliar. Not control. Exposure. The word document changed the temperature of the room. Not argue. Not threaten. Document. The manager straightened slightly. "There's no need to escalate this." I'm not escalating, Monique replied. I'm preserving. Behind the counter, Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He pulled up the internal client profile again, this time fully expanding the account hierarchy.
His eyes widened.
Multiple entities. Holding companies. A parent structure tied directly to a swallowed. Sir, he tried again, quieter now. This client is listed under Daniel. The warning in the manager's voice was sharp. The teller shifted uncomfortably. He had stopped posturing.
Now he was just watching.
Security remained nearby, but his stance had softened. He wasn't sure what he was guarding anymore. Monique turned slightly, addressing the manager, but projecting enough for the small crowd that had formed. For clarity, she said what specific transaction triggered this. Hold the manager hesitated. There was a system-generated alert. For what large cash withdrawal behavior? She nodded once. And how many times have I made a cash withdrawal over $50,000 in the past year? He didn't answer. Daniel did. 0, he said before he could stop himself. The silence that followed was immediate. The manager turned slowly toward him. Monique didn't smile. Thank you, she said. Daniel felt heat rise to his face. The manager exhaled sharply. Even so, sudden liquidity movement is flagged as a precaution. A precaution against what she asked. He didn't say it, but everyone heard it. A man near the entrance muttered, they think she's laundering.
Someone else whispered, this doesn't feel right.
Phones were no longer discreet. They were visible. The teller adjusted his vest. Look, if compliance clears it, we'll proceed. And how long does that take? Monique asked. Could be hours. Could be days. Days. The word landed like a quiet insult. Monique reached into her portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. Not a bank statement. Not proof of funds. A formal letter on thick embossed stationery. She didn't hand it over yet. Instead, she placed it face down on the counter. I informed this branch yesterday of today's withdrawal, she said. Time stamped. Logged. The manager frowned. There's no note in the system. There should be. Daniel quickly checked the internal messaging archive. There it was. Branch notification. 4:12 p. M. Previous day. Subject scheduled cash withdrawal client ID 7842H. He looked up slowly. Sir, the manager's composure began to thin. Even with notice he pressed, we reserve the right to protect the bank. Monique studied him carefully. You keep saying that. Her voice was no longer just calm. It was surgical. Protect the bank from what exactly? No one answered. Her phone vibrated again. Angela level 2 complete. Executive registry accessed. Monique finally turned the paper over on the counter. The embossed header caught the overhead lights. The manager leaned forward to read it, and for the first time since she walked in, his certainty faltered. The paper didn't scream wealth. It whispered authority. Heavy stock. Embossed seal. Minimalist letterhead. The manager leaned closer, expecting a legal threat. A demand. Maybe a lawyer's signature. Instead, he saw a name. Monique Harris. Below it, board chair. His eyes flicked upward. That doesn't mean, he began. It means, she interrupted softly, that yesterday's notification wasn't a courtesy. Daniel had already pulled up the executive registry page on his internal terminal. He wasn't supposed to access it without authorization. But he did, and there it was. Primary shareholder, First National Holdings. Monique Harris. His throat went dry. Sir, he said again, this time not quietly. She's listed under corporate governance. The teller froze. The security guard stepped back half a pace, instinctively recalibrating his proximity. The manager stared at the paper, then at her, then back at the screen Daniel had foolishly angled outward. That registry isn't for branch-level decisions, he said, though the edge in his voice was gone. No, Monique agreed. It's not. The lobby was no longer pretending not to watch. A man in a suit near the investment desk whispered Google her. 2 seconds later, someone inhaled sharply. Oh my God. Phones were fully raised now. Monique didn't look at any of them. She kept her attention on the manager. You've used the word protect 5 times, she said calmly. You implied risk. You implied unusual behavior. You suggested restriction. Her eyes were steady. On what basis the manager tried to recover posture? We follow compliance triggers. No one is above procedure. Correct, she replied. No one is. Her phone buzzed again. Angela Level 3 initiated. Board notified. The manager's own phone vibrated almost immediately after. He ignored it. Then it rang. Corporate line. He didn't move. It rang again. And again. The teller looked at him. You should answer that. He finally did. Mitchell. Silence.
Color drained from his face.
Yes, I see. A pause. No, I wasn't aware. Longer pause. His eyes shifted toward Monique. Yes, she's here. The lobby could hear only his side, but that was enough. Yes, immediately. He lowered the phone slowly. Security took another step back. Daniel's screen logged him out automatically corporate override. The manager swallowed. Mons, Harris, he said, voice suddenly formal, almost brittle. There appears to have been a miscommunication. Monique didn't move. No, she said quietly. There was an assumption. The word landed harder than any accusation. Behind her, someone whispered, "This is insane." The teller's hands were no longer steady. I was just following procedure, she finished for him. No anger. Just clarity. The manager cleared his throat. We will process the withdrawal immediately. Monique studied him for a long moment. Measured the shift. Measured the fear. Then she gave a small nod. Now, she said, we can discuss procedure. The shift was visible. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Subtle. But undeniable. The teller reprinted the withdrawal request, hands no longer steady. The printer's hum felt louder than it should have. Paper slid out clean this time. Untorn. 500,000, he confirmed quietly. In mixed denominations, Monique replied. As noted yesterday. He nodded without argument. Behind him, Daniel's system remained locked. Corporate override banner across the screen. A C C E S E A T R I C T A D A. The manager stood stiffly beside the counter posture, corrected tone altered. Miss Harris, I want to personally apologize for the inconvenience. Inconvenience, she repeated. Her gaze moved slowly across the lobby. Phones still raised. Whispers still circulating. You publicly implied criminal activity, she said. In front of clients. Staff. Security. The manager's jaw tightened. That was not the intention. No, she agreed. It was the reflex. That landed.
Security shifted his weight again.
Ma'am, I apologize if my presence escalated anything. You did your job, she said calmly. You responded to a narrative you were given. She turned her eyes back to the manager. But narratives start somewhere. The teller placed the reprinted slip in front of her. If you could sign here.
She signed without hesitation.
The branch felt smaller now. Quieter. Not because she had raised her voice. Because she hadn't. A woman near the seating area spoke up softly, not to Monique, but to the room. She never once argued. No one contradicted her. The manager's phone vibrated again. He checked it this time. Internal HR. Compliance escalation ticket. Subject line visible even from where Daniel stood. URGENTCLIANTIAMPIAKEACTEIEVLEELELOEEL. His shoulders lowered. Ms. Harris, he began carefully. Corporate has requested a full report. I'm aware, she replied, and they've placed the branch under temporary review. Daniel inhaled sharply. The teller stopped mid-count. Monique nodded once. Good, good. The manager swallowed. I assure you there was no bias involved. She looked at him fully now. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just exact. You said you were protecting the bank, she reminded him. Yes. From me. Silence. No, he said quickly. From potential risk. She held his gaze. And what about the risk of misjudgment? He had no answer. The cash was placed in structured bundles, now organized, counted twice. The teller pushed it forward carefully. Your withdrawal, Ms. Harris. She didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, she addressed the room. Procedure is necessary, she said clearly. Oversight is necessary. A pause. But assumption, she continued, is expensive. The manager's badge buzzed softly at his hip. He glanced down, then at Daniel's screen, then back at her. Monique finally gathered the cash, sliding it into her portfolio case. No smile. No theatrics. Just consequence. And for the first time that morning, the branch understood something fundamental. She had never come for the money. She had never come for the money. That became clear the moment she didn't leave. Most clients, once embarrassed, would grab their cash and walk out fast. Head down. Conversation avoided. Monique stayed. The bundles rested inside her structured leather case now. Sealed. Accounted for. But she remained at the counter. The manager noticed first. Is there anything else we can assist you with, Ms. Harris, assist. The word tasted different now. Yes, she said calmly. There is. Daniel stopped pretending to reorganize his terminal. The teller froze mid-motion. Security straightened, unsure whether to relax or brace again. Monique stepped slightly away from the counter and turned not just to the manager, but to the entire branch floor. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Who initiated the compliance flag? The manager hesitated. It was system-generated. I'd like the timestamp. His jaw tightened again. That information is internal? So am I, she replied. Silence rippled outward. The manager's phone vibrated once more. He checked it this time without resistance. Corporate compliance, all branch-level decisions regarding executive tier clients are now under review. Provide written documentation immediately. His fingers tightened around the device. Monique continued. When a system flags an account, someone interprets that flag. She looked directly at the teller. Was it you the young man swallowed? It came up on screen. And you decided to escalate publicly. I followed protocol. She nodded once. Yes, Cess. That's what everyone says. A murmur moved through the waiting area. The woman who had whispered earlier now spoke more boldly. They didn't treat the man before her like that. Heads turned. The teller flushed. That was different, he said defensively. That was a business deposit. Monique didn't look away from him. And mine, no answer. Daniel cleared his throat softly. The system note says, unusual pattern, he said, voice careful but audible. But there's no historical irregularity. The manager shot him a warning glance. Too late. Monique absorbed the information. No irregularity, she repeated. The manager stepped in quickly. Ms. Harris, we value every client equally.
She studied him again.
If that were true, she said quietly, this morning would have felt different. The room stilled. Her phone vibrated again. Angela board escalation complete. Temporary access audit approved. You have authority. Monique slipped the phone back into her blazer. Then she did something no one expected. She stepped behind the velvet divider rope toward the private client consultation desk. Security instinctively moved. She stopped with a single glance. "I'm not leaving," she said. The manager's composure cracked just slightly. "Ms. Harris, that area is restricted to." She turned toward him fully. "I'm aware." A pause. Then, effective immediately, this branch is under executive audit. The words didn't echo. They settled. Daniel's terminal refreshed again. CELAILAGEEAOKEEADINGRAVIE. The teller's login flickered. The manager's badge buzzed once more. And for the first time that morning, the power dynamic didn't just shift. It had inverted. The inversion didn't come with shouting. It came with silence. A corporate silence. Daniel's screen refreshed again, this time not with a restriction, but with a banner he had never seen before: EXECUTIVEOVERSIGHTMODEAAAACTIVE. The manager stared at his own tablet. His credentials flickered. LIMITEDACCESS. He looked up at Monique. "You can't just declare an audit in the middle of a branch floor." "I did," she said evenly. The board did. A few customers gasped softly. The teller's hands hovered over the keyboard, uncertain whether he was still authorized to touch anything. Monique stepped toward the private client desk, fully now no rope between her and the space. "This morning," she said, voice calm but resonant, "a fully funded account with documented notice was flagged as unusual." She let that word sit in the air. An executive tier client was publicly questioned. Security was positioned. Criminal implication was suggested. The manager opened his mouth. She raised a hand, not aggressively. "Just enough. Let's be accurate." The lobby was no longer murmuring. It was listening. "You said you were protecting the bank," she continued, "but what you were protecting was assumption." Her eyes moved across the teller, then to security, then back to the manager. "You mistook discretion for suspicion." The sentence landed heavier than any accusation. The manager swallowed. "Ms. Harris, if there was a misunderstanding," she turned fully toward him now. "You accused me of risk," she said quietly. "A beat. In a bank I built." The words didn't rise. They dropped. Phones lifted higher. Daniel felt something shift inside him, not fear, not loyalty. Awareness. The manager's face drained of color. "You built, I led the acquisition," she clarified calmly. 3 years ago. When this institution was bleeding deposits. Silence. The teller looked like he might sit down. Monique's voice remained measured. "You saw a withdrawal. You saw a number. And you filled in the rest." No one moved. No one breathed loudly. The security guard lowered his hands completely now. The manager's phone vibrated again. He didn't need to check it. He already knew. Monique stepped closer, not invading, not threatening, just present. "Bias doesn't always shout," she said. "Sometimes it hides behind procedure." The teller's login blinked red.
Session suspended.
Daniel's terminal mirrored it. Branch-level authority paused. The manager exhaled slowly, realizing the full weight of what had just happened. This wasn't a scene. It was a reckoning, and it had just been live-streamed. The collapse didn't come with sirens. It came with notifications. 3 devices buzzed at once. The manager's phone, the teller's terminal, the branch operations tablet mounted behind the counter. Daniel's screen went dark for half a second, then rebooted into a restricted dashboard view. REMO, TEAADMINA, CCESS, ENABLAD. The manager stared at his badge. It flashed amber, then red. CCESLIMITEDCONTACTDMIN. He looked up slowly. Miss Harris, but his voice had lost its edge. Monique didn't respond to her name this time. She was watching the systems, watching the institution correct itself. The teller attempted to log back in. Invalid credentials. He tried again. Session suspended pending HR review. His breathing quickened. I didn't mean you meant to follow what felt safe, Monique said calmly. The security guard stepped fully away from her side, now repositioning near the entrance instead. Not guarding her, guarding the branch. The manager's phone rang again. This time, he answered immediately. Yes. Long pause. His shoulders sank. I understand. Another pause. Yes, Cess. I'll comply. He ended the call without looking at her. Corporate has requested that I step aside, he said stiffly. Effective immediately.
The words felt foreign in his mouth.
Daniel's eyes widened. The teller looked like someone had pulled oxygen from the room. Monique nodded once. Good. The manager removed his badge slowly.
Placed it on the counter.
The sound of plastic against marble echoed louder than the earlier accusations. I was protecting the bank, he muttered. Monique met his eyes one final time. No, she said quietly. You were protecting your assumption. Silence held the room. HR's voice crackled faintly from the branch tablet, muted but visible through on-screen prompts. BRANCHREVIAW, INIT, IATED, INTERIMSUPERVISORENROUTE. A woman near the waiting area began clapping softly. Not loud. Not celebratory. Just acknowledgement. One by one, others followed. Not for humiliation. For correction. Monique turned toward the small crowd. Her voice softened, but it carried. I didn't raise my voice today. A pause. I raised the standard. Phones captured it. Daniel felt it. The teller lowered his head. And in that quiet, procedural dismantling of authority, the lesson became undeniable. Integrity isn't tested when things are easy. It's revealed when someone thinks you don't belong. No one rushed to leave. That was the surprising part. Banks are built on movement lines, shifting transactions, processing quiet efficiency. But now the branch felt suspended, like history had paused at mid-breath. The interim supervisor arrived within 12 minutes. Mid-50s. Navy suit. Corporate badge already activated remotely. She stepped inside with the posture of someone briefed in transit. Ms. Harris. No confusion in her tone. No hesitation. Monique inclined her head slightly. Thank you for responding quickly. The former manager stood off to the side. Now no badge, no authority. Just a man recalculating the morning. The supervisor turned to him first. You'll need to gather your personal items. No spectacle. No shouting. Just execution. He nodded once, tight and pale. The teller remained frozen behind the counter until HR appeared on the mounted screen again. EMPLOYEEREVIAWTEMPORARYUSPUSEION. He swallowed hard. Is this permanent? Monique answered before anyone else could. That depends on whether this was ignorance or intent. The room absorbed that. Daniel felt the weight of it most. The supervisor faced Monique again. The board has requested a full cultural compliance audit of this branch, she said. Effective immediately. Monique looked around the lobby slowly. At the customers. At the staff. At the cameras still recording. This isn't about one transaction, she said clearly. It's about reflex.
She turned toward Daniel.
You spoke up. He blinked. I just checked the file. That's how it starts, she replied. The supervisor nodded toward him. You'll assist with the audit. Shock flickered across his face. Yes, ma'am. Monique stepped back toward the center of the floor. Her cash still rested in her portfolio, untouched since it was sealed. She addressed the room one last time. Procedure protects institutions, she said, but integrity protects people. A pause. When those two fall out of alignment, leadership corrects it. Phones lowered slowly now. The tension had drained not because it vanished, but because it resolved. The former manager picked up his coat. No one stopped him. No one needed to. Monique walked toward the exit doors, heels quiet against marble. Just before stepping outside, she paused and looked back. This bank doesn't belong to me because I own shares, she said evenly. It belongs to every client who walks in expecting dignity. Then she stepped into the daylight. And inside the branch, something fundamental had shifted. Not the policies. The standard. Outside the doors closed softly behind her. Inside the branch didn't return to normal. It recalibrated. The interim supervisor moved quickly, efficiently, directing staff, disabling logins, instructing customers that operations would continue with limited services for the next hour. But even as systems reset, something less visible was still shifting. Daniel stood behind the counter, hands resting on the marble edge where the confrontation had unfolded. He replayed the moment in his mind. Her name is in executive registry. He had almost stayed quiet. Almost. The supervisor approached him. You understand why this matters? She said quietly. Yes, ma'am. It's not about hierarchy. It's about instinct. He nodded. Across the room, two customers were still talking. She never yelled. She didn't have to. The teller sat in the small consultation office, now waiting for HR to finish the preliminary review. His earlier confidence had dissolved into stunned silence. He wasn't fired yet, but he wasn't secure either. Upstairs, far from the branch, emails were moving fast. Subject lines multiplying. CLIENTEXPERIENCERISK. CULTURALRESPONSEF AILURA XACUTIVPCAZ. By noon, the video had reached financial Twitter. Clipped. Captioned. Shared. Black CEO flagged for fraud at her own bank. The phrase spread quickly, but the full story spread faster. Because someone had posted the final line. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard. In the executive offices downtown, Monique removed her blazer and placed it carefully over the back of her chair. Angela stood near the window, tablet in hand. Public response? Angela asked. Minimal, Monique replied. We acknowledge review. We don't defend behavior. Angela nodded. And the branch retrain. Audit. Promote the ones who speak up. She sat down slowly, not exhausted. Focused. This was never about humiliation. It was about correction. She opened her laptop and began drafting a memo not to shareholders. To employees?
Subject line dignity is policy.
Back at the branch, Daniel glanced at the reopened teller window and took a quiet breath. For the first time that morning, the building didn't feel intimidating. It felt accountable. And that more than the audit, more than the suspension, more than the viral clip was the real shift. By late afternoon, the memo had circulated company-wide.
Subject line dignity is policy.
Not legal update. Not incident report. Not public relations. Dignity. Inside the executive conference room, senior leadership sat unusually quiet. No one shuffled papers. No one interrupted. Monique stood at the head of the table, not towering, not theatrical. Measured. What happened this morning, she began, was not a systems failure. A slide appeared behind her. BRANCHINTERACTIONTIMELINEREV It was a reflex failure. The words held. On the screen, timestamps rolled. 10:17 a.m. Withdrawal request, 10:18 Compliance flag interpreted 10:19 a.m. Public escalation, 10:22 a.m. Executive registry ignored 10:24 a.m.
Security presence, she looked around the room.
At no point did the system require humiliation. No one disagreed. The chief risk officer cleared his throat. The compliance alert was algorithmic. And the response, she asked, silence. Human. She let that settle. Back at the branch, Daniel sat in a temporary review session with the interim supervisor. You spoke up, she reminded him. I hesitated, he admitted. You still spoke. He absorbed that quietly. The teller, meanwhile, faced HR over video call. Did you assume risk based on behavior, HR asked evenly, or based on perception? He stared at the desk. I reacted to the amount. Or the person he had no clean answer. Across social media, commentary had shifted. Not outrage anymore. Reflection. Clips of Monique's final statement were circulating in business circles, leadership podcasts, DEI panels. Not because she embarrassed someone. Because she didn't. Inside the boardroom, Monique closed her laptop. Effective immediately, she said all branch-level compliance escalations involving large withdrawals must occur privately. She paused. And any employee who publicly implies criminality without verified cause will face review. The CEO beside her nodded slowly. Understood. Monique gathered her notes. This isn't about fear, she added. It's about alignment. She walked toward the window overlooking the city. Banks are built on trust, not vaults. Trust. And that morning in a single branch it had been tested. Not by fraud, by assumption. Behind her, leadership began adjusting policy language. But Monique didn't watch. She already knew. The standard had been reset, and this time it would hold. Evening settled over the city slowly. Inside the executive office, the skyline reflected in the glass behind Monique like a second-world, quiet, distant, orderly. Down below, thousands of people were finishing their workdays, closing shops, locking doors, balancing registers. Trust. It was a fragile currency, more fragile than cash. Angela stepped in gently. The internal response has been overwhelmingly supportive. Monique didn't turn immediately, and external business media picked it up, framed it as leadership under pressure. The clip is circulating in management circles. Monique nodded once. Good. Not because it was viral, because it was understood. Across town at the branch, the day had ended differently than it began. The interim supervisor stood with the remaining staff in a small semicircle near the teller stations. Tomorrow, she said evenly, we start retraining. Not on compliance mechanics.
She looked directly at them.
On perception. No one argued. The teller sat quietly in the back office termination, not yet decided, but consequences clear. Daniel locked up his terminal for the night and paused before leaving. He glanced at the marble counter where the confrontation had unfolded. It looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. That morning, he had almost stayed silent. Almost. Outside, Monique finally turned away from the window and sat at her desk.
She opened a fresh document.
Not policy. Not discipline. Culture. She began typing, "Leadership is not the absence of error. It is the correction of it." Her phone buzzed once more. A message from a branch employee she had never met. "Thank you for not yelling." She read it twice. Then she typed back one line. "Yelling isn't power. Standards are." She closed her laptop and leaned back. Years ago, at 23, she had stood in a different bank lobby, smaller, dismissed, waiting for access to money she had earned. No one had corrected that moment. No one had raised the standard for her. So she built one, not out of revenge, out of clarity. The next morning, employees across every branch would log in to a new training module titled "Dignity is Policy." Not optional, not decorative, foundational. And in one Midtown branch where voices had once tightened around assumption, something quieter now lived. Awareness. Because the lesson had never been about $500,000. It had been about something more expensive. The cost of bias. And the price of leadership. Monique stood, turned off the office lights, and walked into the hallway. Calm, unrushed, unshaken.
She hadn't raised her voice.
She had raised the standard, and this time the institution rose with it.